Welcome to 22 Sides. I'm Alexis. I'm here today with Robin and a very special guest who is a college professor, a film producer, a longtime advocate, and does a lot of other things. So, Sharon, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Sharon Ferranti, and I live in Houston, Texas. I'm a freelance filmmaker and still photographer, and I am happy to be here and talk about community.
Now it gets to be very quiet, right?
Right, exactly. Freezing up.
Now, we were talking earlier and mentioning various things, and I pointed out that one of the things that was so funny was that I didn't think I knew anything about making films or movies or anything, and then found the whole box of things from Cozumel
VHSs and recording
all like
tapes.
that. Because what we did was we wanted some video for our people,
Right.
And we had a handy cam, and so after we figured out how to use it, we found somebody in Cozumel that really wanted to do this and really liked it. So we taught them how to use it and gave them the camera and all the things. And the only deal was that they had to do it with us. And then we did that all over the Caribbean.
Wow.
So filming scuba tours and people's vacations.
And one of the hilarious things is that I was watching one of these relaxation videos that, some place on the internet. And I'm sort of going through and I'm narrating it. And because I'm like, oh, this is here and this is here, and this is this reef and this is this reef, and those are Scuba Pro split fins. There are only about 2 people in the world that got to try those. And then it pans up a little bit. I'm like, and that would be me.
Oh my God! You're watching TV and you see yourself float by, literally.
Yeah, literally. And it was hilarious because I was like, okay, that is me.
That's a trip.
And the biggest, like I said, biggest thing we would do is it's like, well, let the videographers know when we're going to be in town, and we get first call on them because we provide all their equipment and all like that.
Right.
And then they get to sell the videos to whoever they want and that whole bit. And, that was one of those things that was fun, and it made it better for our whole industry and all those things.
Sure. Yeah.
And then one day you turned on Roku and there you were, just floating by in your best relaxation
And I did go look, and I do believe I have
relaxed.
a copyright on it.
The footage must look good, or they wouldn't have put it on. So that's great.
It's perfect. Well, and the funniest thing is that the videographer that we had in Cozumel, Carlos, has a special way of filming turtles underwater.
Oh, yeah?
And that was the first thing that caught me. I'm like,
Turtleography?
yeah, pretty much. Carlos comes up behind him and slowly comes around to the. I mean, it's
Okay.
You can look at it and you're like, Carlos filmed that one.
Carlos shot that. Yeah, I love
That's
it.
a Carlos film.
I love it.
And
Does he not want to startle him, or is that just what looks best?
it's Carlos's way of filming them. Part of it is catching up to them
I see.
because there's current and the turtles are swimming.
They're scurrying about. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that whole bit. But it was so funny because I'm sort of narrating it, and I'm like, wait a minute.
That's a trip. That hasn't happened to me yet. So.
It's a wonderful thing to want to relax and then turn on something and you're in the film relaxing. It's like, hey, just remember this moment that you were in.
Oh my God.
It's not a borrowed moment, but I imagine with all the film work that you've done, Sharon, you probably haven't had to chase your subjects.
No.
They may not be turtles, but I think you do humans.
Yeah, no, even doing a horror film, they were intentionally running, and we knew where they were going.
Okay, good.
And we got to tell them to stop.
That's no fair.
I know, right? Although there were snakes out on that territory.
And you lived.
We constantly had PAs out in the grasses behind the actors with
Checking the
sticks,
spot.
beating the ground and yelling "snake, snake,
Good.
snake" to make sure that they stayed away from the actors. It was
no.
bizarre. Yeah.
If I heard any of those beatings, I just wouldn't be able to go. I'd be like, I'm so sorry, Sharon.
Yeah.
I can't make it, actually. That's my horror film.
The entire thing taught me about the concept of set karma, which I didn't know anything about, and learned that I have terrible set karma because through the entire film it was snakes, spiders, scorpions, angry women. I mean, you name it. You name
Well,
it.
it was a lesbian film, so I feel like that might have happened anyway. But
no, you're right.
What's set karma for people who don't know?
Set karma is like luck. It's simply put, it's just, do you have good luck on the set? Do things kind of go your way, or do gremlins follow you everywhere and manifest? And
And the
it's
classic-
improved over the
Sure,
years.
so these,
I think the classic current example of bad set karma is Rust.
Rust. Yeah, that'd be the ultimate bad set. karma.
Everything went wrong with that film.
Couldn't have gone worse. Literally.
Oh.
Literally.
No.
oh,
No.
gosh.
And you're like,
I must be living right though, because it's completely shifted now, and I definitely have better set karma than I used to.
What do you attribute that to? What are some takeaways from your background? I mean,
experience.
Okay.
I've made a lot more films now is the number one thing, but also respect for something like karma.
wow.
Respect for the vibe, respect for the ineffable, the things that are floating in the air between people that are unpredictable. And I respect that and I allow for it. You know? So I'm not constantly trying to control it anymore.
That's beautiful.
It's okay. It's just
That's
okay.
beautiful.
Yeah, I was going to say, to me, that's part of the neatest part about some films.
It is.
And it's like, I don't think
100%.
that was scripted in.
Unplanned and compensating for problems.
It was allowed for.
And at the end of the day, it has to be allowed for. It's going to happen. You cannot control everything that happens on the set.
I think that's something that a lot of artists, no matter what the modality that they use is, they grapple with. It's like they have a vision.
Correct.
And that's one form of the art.
Right.
But what actually gets delivered in reality is going to be a whole different project.
The
and
art's going to tell you what it wants to be.
it's hard to embrace that.
Very, very
But
difficult.
sometimes it could be better.
I don't think there's a media that is more susceptible to that than film, because you have a script, you have a vision. You should not compromise on your vision until you absolutely have to, and you should surround yourself with people who encourage you to pursue your vision. But the movie is going to tell you what it wants to be, and you'll find that out in the edit.
Yeah.
Completely offset.
And do you always do your own edits or have like a hard hand on that? Or
I love editing, which is not common in my business.
I was about to say, you love editing?
I love editing, and I'm in the vast minority, but I do love editing. But because I've really done a lot of it, so it doesn't intimidate me anymore.
I was going to say, I hate editing video,
Right.
and the reason is I'm a perfectionist.
That will get in your way.
Yes, it will.
That will get in your way for sure. The technology is massive. It takes a long time to really get your arms around the software itself and what it can do. But in answer to your question, I have edited most of the things that I've made out of necessity, out of very small budgets, and not able to.
that takes up a lot of
hire
hours.
someone, you know. But I've handed things. I've been the editor on projects that I didn't shoot, and I have handed projects off to other editors, and they've all worked out one way or the other just fine. But I'm comfortable in all of those roles. I not to like break my arm patting myself on the back or whatever, but I genuinely am an auteur. I do write, I do direct, I am a performer, and I can take it all the way to the end. So.
Right. Well, I think it's one thing to boast and not have the experience or the accolades, but you're somebody who actually has those things behind you. And I think that knowing what little I do about you, you're undersold. And
Thanks.
I think that people need to step up and share as they can. It may be painful for some people, but people need to know the work that it actually takes to deliver on things. The acknowledgments can come in that. And I think sometimes we do need to hear that because we don't get the acknowledgments back to us when we put things out into the world. Not that some of us really never do it to get the acknowledgments. So we're not even waiting around to listen. And I'm sure you're in that category, but but
it's nice when you do get it.
It's nice when you do get it. It's so weird, the verisimilitude of what's happening right now. I made a feature film in 2019.
Yes.
And I'm very proud of it. And
do you want to say the title or no?
yeah, sure. The Tiny War of Vera Mae Nowak.
Okay.
Is the title. The Tiny War of Vera Mae Nowak. And it stars Annalee Jeffries, who has been an institution in Houston theater and was on Queen Sugar in New Orleans, and is the most beautiful person you could ever imagine. She really is. But first and foremost, she's brilliant. And I didn't think she was in my league. So talk about underselling herself, right?
Yeah.
And
sounds like you took a risk. You got some courage.
Yeah, no, I did. Through circumstances, I got some courage, and I sent her the script, and just benefited beyond description from her willingness to be in the film, super low budget. That meant she had to carry weight she normally wouldn't if they had a bigger crew. At any rate,
and she did it. That gives me goosebumps.
And she watched the film again last night. This is what's so interesting.
How timely.
Last night, it was her birthday yesterday.
Aw.
And she had seen the film when I originally finished it and screened it for a small group. And since then have done a lot more editing, and it made the rounds on the festival circuit and did well. I do have distribution, but I haven't accepted it yet. I'm still debating what exactly I want to do with that film. But she was talking about that very thing that you just mentioned, about she really wants it to be seen more.
Sure.
And I don't pursue accolades. I don't pursue recognition, and I don't think that's helpful to my career. But to have Anna Lee come back a couple of years later and go, "This is amazing. I'm really proud of it."
Such an acknowledgement.
Yeah, trust me, that's like more than anything else. Is to have Anna Lee be very proud of her work in the film and the film itself. So
So if people wanted to see it,
right now, my debate is whether to go ahead and put it on YouTube, because frankly, YouTube has the best monetization of any streaming platform. The big streamers don't pay filmmakers, which tells you why filmmaking is where it is. Okay. But on YouTube, you're in the driver's seat a lot more. And so I have distribution with a small company, and if I took it, then you'd be able to see it on their platform. I'm not going to say what it is yet because I haven't signed the contract.
No worries.
But I haven't really... We could talk all day about the difficulty of being a small independent filmmaker and trying to get your film out into the world. Where YouTube has the opposite in terms of prestige, recognition. If you put your film on YouTube, you immediately lose any kind of professional, legitimate validity.
Well, it's interesting because life is full of trade-offs, right?
Yeah,
and we want to continue to parse out these conversations so we can have a side conversation about that. And we do call this podcast 22 Sides. So we can have a specific underlining thread for just that. And we would love for you and artists and business developers or just community peer sharing to contribute to people that are interested in that particular thing.
Right. It's very much a side conversation, and thank you for saying that, because I'd love to do that on, we could totally do that kind of contained way. But so you can't see my movie right now unless I specifically send you a link. That's the answer to your question.
And do you have any movies that are accessible to be seen?
Well, I made a horror film that we discussed earlier called Make-A-Wish, right out of film school, immediately out of film school.
I've actually had the pleasure of seeing this film.
Make-A-Wish, yes. You can see Make-A-Wish. Wolf Video distributes it. It streamed on Netflix for 11 years. Wow. There was a time when you could rent it on Netflix. So super proud of that.
Wow.
But right now, you'd have to reach out to Wolf Video and order the DVD in order to see it.
Sure. So if you are having a group party and or a pity party, or you're someone who loves horror, this scenario from what I remember is a lesbian invites all of her exes out to a campsite.
Yes, if you're really angry at your ex, it's the perfect movie.
For her birthday.
And they start to disappear. I don't know where that came from.
Oh my gosh, it was so unforeseen. But I think one of the things I heard was it was hard for you to continue to make this movie because no animals were harmed.
No animals were harmed.
But in true lesbian nature, no animals in this horror film were actually harmed. So she had to wait for animals to be super dead or naturally.
Oh my god! There's a squirrel.
I was going to say find roadkill.
Yeah,
we literally did.
Yeah,
find roadkill. The producer ran into a vulture. What are they called? Vulture?
Yeah.
And killed it, and we put it in the movie. And when we were in pre-production, nowhere near ready to shoot, someone's dog killed a squirrel, and we took the squirrel and put it in the freezer.
You're like outsourcing deaths at this point just to not cause them.
Yeah.
And I mean, the lengths that some artists will go to hold their values are just really tender. I love that. But if you're on any sort of realistic timeline, that had to be crucial.
Oh my God. There was one guy who died in the film via blowtorch.
Okay.
And the makeup took 17 hours.
Oh my gosh.
So he probably wanted to kill me. He wanted me to be roadkill by the time that was done. We shot on a ranch 2 hours west of Austin in May, and it was very warm. And all of the women were from outside of Houston. They came from LA, they came from Toronto. We had a couple who were local, but they didn't know anything about scorpions and snakes and feet and all that.
Yeah,
so
what they were putting themselves into.
oh, talk about not hurting cats doesn't come close
No.
to hurting lesbians in the wild.
Right. Who probably don't want to be in the outdoors wild.
No, not campers.
Not all of us are strapping carabiners and ready to take on a hike.
Believe it or not.
We're going to need some amenities.
Yeah, contrary to the stereotype.
Yes.
There are lesbians who don't know anything about tall grass.
Porta potty will not cut it.
Yeah, it's not going to, no.
Especially if
hotels.
it's next to the tall grass.
Yeah, right, exactly. No.
And where would you put it next to the tall grass?
Exactly.
So, I made a horror film because fresh out of film school, that's the advice that you get. And it's not unwise because you can actually sell a horror. They're the easiest genre to sell, and that's why people are advised to make them. And I learned a lot.
And something showing up being tacky in a horror film's just fine.
It's just, and you don't have to have a star.
It's totally fine.
But I don't like. I'm not a
horror film person.
I'm not a horror film person. I don't watch them. I don't like to be scared. And my movie's not very scary.
No, it wasn't, thankfully.
So if you like horror but don't want it to be super scary, watch Make-A-Wish.
It wasn't campy. I wouldn't say that. But it was between like but I'm a cheerleader camp and like some start to be scary. It was like it had some suspense.
Agreed.
But it wasn't like, I mean, these horror films these days get like psychologically trippy. This was more like, oh yeah, I could see this being someone's birthday wish. And if you're a lesbian and you've been a part of the do-si-do dating games, and you tend to get an invite from your ex to a campground, it's like maybe think it through. If like don't go.
Think it through.
Maybe like that. Did you make amends? Maybe don't go if you didn't.
Maybe
know.
Yeah, get a flat tire. Don't show up. Yeah. But that was the only film. And we're ostensibly going to discuss community.
Sure,
right?
sure. Yeah.
And
let's dive into it.
I think that might be the only project I've ever made in my entire life, right up to today, that wasn't specifically for community.
Interesting.
It's a lesbian movie, so it is.
I was about to say, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You said a lesbian horror film, and you're saying it's not for community?
Yeah, because there's not very many lesbian horror fans. There really aren't.
Oh, I know. I must know a weird number then.
I think you just know the weird niche.
When you get out into the world,
well, and I do know Mel's friends.
Yes.
It seems it was surprising. Let me put it this way: it was surprising to me, the pushback. Okay.
So
there was a lot of pushback from lesbians about making a horror film.
Well,
at the time,
lesbians pushing back on everything is predictable.
Bottom line, what was I thinking?
What was their pushback for this?
Boy, you just gave me 100 years of therapy with that comment right there. You just put it all to bed. I never have to worry about it again. Of course, there was going to be pushback from lesbians. So, at the time, violence in film was a topic everyone was talking about. That's absolutely
true. That's absolutely true.
And I sat on panels when I was on the festival circuit with this film because I'd made... for the opposite, it was the opposite of an accolade. It was to torture me. It was to punish me.
Right. Accountability, hold you in check. Maybe even suppress your artistic abilities. I would imagine.
I think it did to the extent that I wasn't young. I was 42, but I certainly developed quite a few second guessing problems for a while after that. Definitely.
Sure.
And
we do talk about that a bit on the podcast, is like, what does accountability look like and how far is too far?
Ooh, good question.
And, it's one thing to get someone's pronouns right and to become an ally and to dance in the conversation of what it means to be there for somebody. But it's a whole nother thing if we just slam down policing and a rule book and you're never going to get it right. Like, it's just too much. It's too much.
It's so tough. And yet, fair. The toughness is fair because I'll skip to the present.
Sure.
We could go back to 20 years, but right now I'm doing a lot of work. It is a privilege to do this work, and I don't mean white privilege. That's a whole different kind of privilege. It is a privilege to do this work with the Normal Anomaly.
Say a little bit about them in case people don't know.
The Normal Anomaly is an organization in Houston run by Ian L. Haddock, which exists solely for advocacy and community building in Black and brown queer communities. Okay, very much oriented toward trans advocacy, but it is not limited to that by any means.
Because this is not a video podcast, people might guess that you are neither one of those things.
That's possible.
But how would you identify?
I'm a white lesbian.
Okay.
And my pronouns are she and her.
Okay.
And I like labels.
Sure.
I don't, for myself.
You're like,
I'm
let me put this label on.
Totally cool.
Okay. Yeah.
With my label.
Yeah, good.
But one profound lesson I've learned you're talking about accountability.
Sure.
The first documentary, I'm working on my second documentary with them, but the first documentary I made with them.
You're already on a second one. Yeah. This is great.
The topic of HIV prevention, new infection rate, and all of this came up. And I was the interviewer, and I asked the question of the subject, why do you think new infection rate is so high among Black and brown communities? I think that was basically my question.
Sure,
right?
sure.
And
relevant question.
I could tell you all day long that I was ready for the answer, but I wasn't. It was painful. It was extremely painful to hear the answer, which is, I'm just going to sum it up.
Sure.
White communities didn't do advocacy and education in communities of color.
Okay.
And that is way too simplistic of a statement.
Sure.
And that is not what he said.
Sure.
That's the gist.
The gist, yeah.
And I can't speak to the intentionality of AIDS organizations in the late 80s and 90s and late 90s. I can't speak to that. I did AIDS advocacy. I made art that toured. I had an AIDS awareness play that toured for 5 years with HSPVA
You're
students.
no stranger to the AIDS
No stranger
community.
to the topic. No stranger.
But this still blew you away.
It blew me away. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
If you are working in the field, or if you were a white person who did a lot of advocacy, AIDS advocacy at the time,
as you did,
you would say, and it would be valid, we didn't intentionally exclude. That would be valid. But the conversation stops at intentionality because people of color get angry at that statement, as they should. Because the real question is why. Okay, you weren't intentionally exclusive. I believe that.
Sure.
The real question is, why weren't you intentionally inclusive? That's the real question.
The other side of the coin.
It still is.
Yeah.
If you're intentionally inclusive, and I want to know why you're shaking your head. If you're intentionally inclusive, then spaces feel safer. Because there's going to be people of color on the staff, and it's going to be in the vibe, and it's going to be in the decor, and it's going to feel safer.
Yeah.
Okay. So
hopefully, maybe.
Yeah. There are no simple answers.
We're still grappling with that.
No, there's no, and having the conversation is critical. But I'll tell you this: no matter what, forget about.
Sure.
What I know is that community saves lives, diversity saves lives, because the statistics tell the story.
Okay.
All right? If people are still coming into full-blown AIDS in 2005 in the Black community, but they're not coming into full-blown AIDS anymore in the white community since 1997. Why?
Right.
That's it.
Right.
The numbers tell the story.
Sure.
And so that's where I'm doing a lot of work, and I'm very privileged to be in these communities with these people. And I don't have any easy answers. I just know.
Oh, I don't think half of the answers are easy, and none of them are perfect yet, right? But is that some of the tones that your documentary is touching on?
Yes, the documentary that we're working on right now is sponsored by Emory University, Compass Gilead initiative. Did a lot of work in the South. And we went to 5 states documenting the work that they did in these various communities.
That's
we went
substantial.
to Eagle Pass.
Yeah.
We went to Georgia. We went to Florida. We talked about harm reduction, HIV infection, but also safety. In Eagle Pass, the queer community down there is trying to build a safe place. It's just really dangerous to be queer down there.
Sure.
No matter what color you are. Right? And so that all got put in place before the Trump administration, the second Trump administration came in. And now the funding is being ripped away from all of these places.
Right.
So I'm in the middle of this documentary talking about advocacy, saving lives, community, diversity. And the American government is actively saying these communities need to disappear.
Right.
So what do I do now in my documentary? I mean, I feel like that question is now like an overarching perspective. It's like, okay, these communities are important enough for Compass Gilead to fund them and do all this capacity building.
Am I wrong? Because in my mind, if you're talking a documentary, and I'm not talking about, a story that you're making or anything, if you're talking a documentary and some of the situation changes when you're sort of halfway through filming or doing your thing, you have to include it.
You have to include it.
I mean, there's no way around it, is there?
No way around it.
Okay.
And what
it may not be pleasant, by the way.
Right. No. And it may confuse you, whereas you had it all sort of worked out. You knew what you were going to do. Right?
Back to the movie will show you what needs to happen, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna do what I go ahead.
What I was going to say is that happens to be society today.
Yes.
We were doing very well. Everything was going really well. And then, bam, Trump came in.
Right. Because just for reference, we're recording this in May of 2025.
Right.
So.
And he's been in office 4 months or 5 months.
Over
or
100
like
days.
This. And the very first week of his administration, the normal anomalies funding was cut in half. The first week. And that impacted the work that I was doing with them. So I saw right away, what does it mean? That's my question that it now has to lay over this documentary. What does it mean? What are you saying? Are you saying that Black and brown people should not exist? That they really should be disappeared? Because they are disappearing them photographically.
You're the perfect person to hold this question in this time because of your integrity in which you do storytelling, but also because of the walk that you have walked. And you've grappled with really looking at, look, you've lost a lot of your own community to AIDS.
Yeah.
You've done tons of community speaking on the history of that before archives were accessible.
Right.
So you are a living archive going and meeting people where they want to hear about the AIDS history, if you will, your personal history, people's history around you in Houston, and maybe a little bit at large. And you're humbling yourself enough to say, wow, even though I left it all on the mat, even though I gave everything on top of living my own life, I still am willing to look at where my efforts could have been better, more, all the things. And, you're tearing up because you're moved. But a lot of people can't go there. No, and when you've had deep loss, most people in my experience, I'm 42 now, if they've lived through losing people through AIDS, they just get quiet because of grief.
They get quiet and
they have to go on. So to even fathom, you could have done more, or what can you do now in hindsight? Like it takes some humbling, but it also takes a lot of tender conversations, because inside of someone humbling themselves in the efforts that they've done, there is an upset community that never got served.
That's what the problem is. I just respect people who are out there trying to raise money.
Sure.
They're out there holding events.
Sure.
They're out there testing.
Trying.
They're out there making movies. I just respect action.
Yes.
Action is not always easy. Having an opinion is not easy. Disagreeing is not easy. Even agreeing is not easy. But what is easy is sitting at home talking and complaining. If you're not sitting at home, if you're out there, if you're doing stuff, you got my thumbs up. That's the thing.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful thing to say, because people who are coming into something that is already established or creating their own things in an existing community, even though some of them come in shaking fists and I'll do what I want, they still want to do well.
Right.
And they still need support and help. And one of the things that I appreciate about both of you is you've always been willing to extend some wisdom. You've some skill set, some, hey, stay in there, take care of yourself along the way type of vibe. And,
Thank you.
And one of the things that Alexis has always reminded me of is if something is going wrong in community, I'll call her and say, how do I process this? Mm-hmm. And she's like, okay, well, there's the moment now, there's the moment that led into it. And then there's the bigger picture. Yeah. Where are we holding the bigger picture for one another? And sometimes that's really hard to hold by yourself.
It's I agree.
I just sort of keyed something with me. It's sort of like with the Trump situation, if you will, because I see it as that. Mm-hmm. My big thing was I was afraid the courts weren't going to get involved. Okay, they're getting involved, and guess what? It's getting better.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And the
I'm
fact
really grateful for the courts and how they're responding. But at any rate, that's a small part of my community art making. Yeah. And,
So who do you consider your community?
Yes, my community.
And your label accessorizing.
Yeah.
Which labels do you enjoy putting on?
Okay, let's talk about the definition of community. This movie I made, The Tiny War of Vera Mae Nowak, is about a woman who lives in a small town, and she's always gone to church, and all of her friends go to church. She's heterosexual, but she's widowed, so, that doesn't really come up. But these strangers... or a strange, mysterious, beautiful woman comes into town. And also a young man who's always lived there. He's the gay psychic. Well, the church leader wants to get rid of both of them. This beautiful woman they can't label. They don't know her deal.
Not really sure.
She's just mysterious and a little strange.
Yeah.
And the gay psychic, they want to get rid of him.
Yes.
And nobody really knows why. But Vera Mae is like, hold up. Are we a community or not?
Yes.
And it really got me thinking about church. People of faith. Because while I don't go to church, lots of people do. Good people. People who I'm related to. Sure. And they may have at one time voted differently than I did.
Sure. And this was filmed in Houston.
Yeah.
So you're very well aware of the culture that you're filming.
And I'm thinking about why do people go to church? Yeah. They go to church for community more. In my opinion, this is my opinion.
Sure.
Underscore Sharon's opinion.
Sure.
They go to church for community more than for religion. It's a place to go. They have friends there. They have stuff that they do, social events, place to go if there's a hurricane and a blackout, all that stuff, right? Yeah. My community is largely the sober community because that's where I go. That's where my friends hang out. That's where I do stuff. That's my social stuff. I have, if I'm hurting, those are where I go to find people who are going to hold me and not judge me. So the sober community, more than the gay community, is my real community. Wow. And so in a larger, I'm 64 now. I'm not going to the bars anymore. Right. I'm not, I may or may not go to the parade. Depends on, whether
the Houston Heats or
right? Yeah. So I wouldn't say the gay community at large is my community in a very tactile sense, but the sober community definitely is.
And some
sober
people,
gay community.
The sober gay community.
Sober gay community. Okay. I almost exclusively go to Lambda Center and I'm not allergic to other meetings where there's mostly straight people. It's not my thing. Yeah. I'm really lucky. I don't have to. If I lived in a different city, I would have to.
That's true. And a lot of people are kind of on the fence as to whether they share about their sobriety or not. How do you feel about that?
Oh, you can ask me anything. I'm super out about being sober. I've been sober since 1987. I'm not anonymous.
And with your work within the gay sober community, how does that fuel your life? Because a lot of people never get to see the benefits. They see a lot of wreckage from addicts. Right. What are some of the benefits of a sober person? In your walk that you've experienced that you can share with somebody who may be curious about that or hoping for something for that for themselves or just, hoping for that for someone that they love. What have you experienced?
Again, long subject. We could talk about sobriety alone.
We could always have you back.
Love to. When I was newly sober, to answer your question, what are the benefits. You're surrounded by other people who are not drinking and drugging, because sobriety is a radical way of living.
It is.
You just don't find that many people who don't drink.
Right.
You might find more people who don't drug, but you just don't find very many people who don't drink.
I saw a meme that says, wait, so some of you just out here living life raw? Like, what's going on?
Like, what's going on?
No numbness, no whoopee cushion.
None of that
no,
on the edge all the time? Really? Not a glass of wine?
Like, how is that even possible?
Not even a little bit of cough, nothing, right? So that's the immediate benefit. You're surrounded by people who are also not doing the thing you're trying to avoid. And it just really helps to have other people who are not doing that thing. It really does. Then, very quickly, you start hearing things that you don't hear outside of the rooms of recovery. You start hearing things about living in integrity, paying your debts, keeping your commitments, making amends, all of these things that people are just not running around
They're
talking
not talking
about
that most of the time.
God, in recovery, that's all we talk about.
You may only hear about that from like what they would say in the rooms is outside help, like therapists or educational memes or WebMD. But these are actually real people who have done the work, and they're actually talking about their successes.
They're talking about it. See, out in the real world, your life doesn't depend on learning to keep your commitments, making amends, living in integrity. Once you're trying to live in recovery, your very life depends on developing some principles, being a better person. If you don't do that, you're probably going to go back.
You're probably going to go back to using.
Okay? So just sitting in those stupid meetings, really, that's a huge benefit, because you're getting information in your head that you need to survive, and that makes your life better. After that comes the fun. And it comes soon, and it comes quick. It's fun to be sober. It's fun to hang out with people, literally the craziest people you ever meet. But when you sober them up, and they're not out there doing all kinds of things they shouldn't be doing, they're a blast. And they're not wrecking their cars. They're baking you cakes. And they're having plays and drag shows and writing music and everything that you could possibly imagine. So
I really appreciate you sharing that. So how many years do you have sober?
38. Just turned 38 in March.
And I also am sober, and I got sober in 2003, and I have seen this to be true myself. I go to meetings in person at Lambda Center, the Gay AA. And I also go online because I love how during the pandemic, the global access to meetings has been a whole new development in technology. You could literally zoom into a meeting in Ireland or a meeting in Scotland and San Francisco and just see a broader community. And so that's been very helpful for me. And I know that it's not the walk for everyone, but I do know that time and time again, including myself, if you've been in some like incredibly low moments and spaces, that's a community that understands. It's practically free.
It is practically free. Yeah,
they pass a basket. You don't even have to put $1 in.
I mean, the world cannot comprehend this whole phenomenon of, I call it recovery, but I'll out myself, Alcoholics Anonymous.
Sure, yeah.
The way it exists at all. Because there's no dues or fees. You don't have to apply. You don't have to spend money. You don't even have to be sober. You just have to want to be sober. You can be drunk and go to an AA meeting.
Yeah.
Not only that, but there's no leadership.
Right.
How does it survive? How does it exist?
It's been around for how long?
I think we're into the 80th year or something like that now.
They're really a group of people who are imperfect. I mean, they are a bunch of addicts, so calm down about your expectations. But they included people who wanted to get better, who wanted to not be institutionalized. I'm not going to say it right. Institutionalized and in the gutters with their alcoholism, because there were no effective treatments when they first started finding people in the gutters, and then it's grown into Narcotics Anonymous and almost anything anonymous if you want now. But the point is help. And one of my friends, dear friends, during the George Floyd marches, she's a Black Muslim, and she said to me, she's taken so many people to AA and sat with them and been a buddy. She doesn't have addiction, but she was just going as a pal. And she says, you know what, Robin, I just can't stop thinking about how the walls of AA have somehow figured out this we business. You know, like how did they do it?
Figure it out.
They don't exclude people. Like,
no.
You know, and they're not perfect. Like addicts have a lot of wreckage. So I just keep wanting to say that for the people who have been wounded by them. But actual people who are being sober and doing the work, like if you go to meetings, most often they're inclusive. And
I think too, you hit on something very important about community, because in AA, two things. The overriding principle is surviving. Okay, not dying.
We're still animals.
Trying to not die.
Right.
And in AA, we figured out that the only way that's possible, going back to something you talked about, is through protecting the group over the individual. If the group survives, all the individuals will survive. If the group doesn't survive, then the individuals won't survive. So our governance is very simple. It has to do with don't talk about a bunch of divisive stuff that makes the group split up. So we're pretty good about not talking about politics or religion. Those two things.
They have a common saying in the rooms of recovery that says, "Look for the things that we have in common and not the things that are different." So look for the same things, not the differences.
The similarities, not the different.
Yeah. Keep what you can and let the rest go. And I think if most public meetings or community meetings or nonprofit meetings did that, it would shift.
Exactly.
It would shift the agenda towards solution.
It would. If you compare yourself in all these jargony terms, but it really works.
Sure.
If you don't talk about a bunch of stuff that's going to make people want to leave, then
They might stay.
You know, and sometimes you have to, and it does come up. And we're not perfect, but because life or death hangs over AA, it doesn't hang over like your neighborhood
common
association.
person.
You know, that's the difference. We adhere to these things because if we don't, we won't survive.
Right.
So
Well, thank you for coming in. Do you want to say anything, Alexis? We kind of went off into a segue in that.
Not really.
No. Okay.
No. I mean, one of the big things I guess I look at is it's interesting. I tend to observe things and see patterns. And one of the things that I find humorous is with the whole Trump experience, and that's the way I tend to put it because it's an experience. A lot of people are coming to their senses. For instance, you know, the school boards that ban books, guess what? They no longer have the majority to ban the books, and they're bringing them back in.
Interesting.
And you know, Katie, ISD, for instance.
I was like, where is this happening?
Where?
It's Katie. And I was like, what?
They did just have an election out there.
Yeah, and the conservative person didn't win.
Did not win. That's right.
And it took it 4-3. So the vote now 4-3 the other direction.
So great.
And I'm sort of like, you know, maybe people are seeing, wait a minute, this is a life or death thing for my kids
I wonder.
and the intellect and all that. I mean, banning books is one of the most ridiculous things in the world.
And not only that, but in Nebraska yesterday, the mayoral race in Omaha, where they flipped this whole trans thing on its head.
Right.
And I saw this meme where the old mayor had her head under a bathroom stall. And the new mayor, the guy running for it, is like, she's looking at potties, I'm looking at potholes.
Yes.
It won the race for him.
Wow.
It won the race for him because it just is the most effective message of all. It's like, let's
stop shaming one another. Stop torturing people.
Races.
Yes, and getting high on anger is such a cheap high, you know, and it's effective, but it's cheap. And I think I tell people all the time when they say, well, you know, what if we didn't want to hear about all this gay stuff, trans stuff anymore? And I'm like, great, I love that. Why don't you focus on the roads that we all drive? Why don't you focus on actually getting things done that support all of us? Like, I think actually we would love that because we never really wanted to be the attention, you know.
You know, we sort of watch via a backdoor way the things that concern the trans community in Houston.
Okay.
Yeah. And, you know, normally it is gosh, it takes me forever to get hormones, or I can't get my surgery done, or this sort of stuff. I say normally, this is historically. And usually there are people that aren't ready to get a hormone, my personal opinion. And this is Alexis, in case you wonder whose opinion it is. And about 2 years ago, when things started to improve, what we were seeing, their main concerns in Houston were crime. Well, this is everybody's main concern in Houston, I think.
Every
the roads.
neighborhood, the roads.
It was just like everyone else. And I'm like, it's not perfect, trust me, but that's sort of what equality is. It's not a perfect thing.
No.
And, if you're going for perfection, you'll never be happy.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, and when we looked at that, there were a lot of things that we had done to try to make that better. And a lot of things that, we took the approach a few years ago of saying, we need everybody's help. We like everybody's help. But if you aren't going to help, we're going to go ahead and do this stuff for our community. And that really pissed some people off. And, it's like, happy to have you come along or happy to help you or whatever. But we can't just sit here and say, oh, well, y'all are arguing with us and everybody else,
Right.
We should just sit here and not do anything because we're the ones getting beat up.
Precisely.
Yeah, while you keep leaving us behind to get hit by the bus of political expedience, while you open your centers and never actually include the whole community. I mean, the list is large.
It's long.
Right.
And so we don't want to step over that. But I do want to say that, racism is not going to be handled in a one-shot deal.
No.
Infrastructure. We had a mayor that ran on potholes, and somebody said, "I just don't know if I can vote for another type of mayor. Like, what? Why does my vote matter?" I'm like, "Because there's still potholes. Like, calm down. Like, there's some things that we still have to get done, and one of the easiest ways to share your voice is to vote, and to click play, to take care of yourself, to check in with the people around you. And art has inspired me to be able to look and rethink things and to heal. And I know that you've had a huge part in that, both of you, in facilitating different forms of art to meet people in different places in their life. And we'll continue to talk about activism. We'll continue to talk about art. We'll continue to take care of ourselves along the way. But for today, we just wanted to start the conversation from this viewpoint in this moment in May of 2025, because these dumpster fires have been burning. They're going to keep going. So if we don't come to the table to actually check in, share, and say where we're at, I think we're doing a disservice to everyone who wants to come around us and behind us, and we'll continue to do the work. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And
I really appreciate it.
is there anything you would like us to push in our podcast? We'll stick an ad in or stuff like that. I mean, we'd be happy to push the movie that we can't see, but that wouldn't
my
be
website,
good.
The Sharon Show. I mean,
Okay.
I'm a
Yeah.
fully self-employed freelance videographer, filmmaker, still photographer, and you can send people to the Sharon Show.
And I think people that are interested in some of the things you talked about could find out where it's at, how
Yeah.
you're going to distribute it, how you end the documentary or start another documentary with Normal Anomaly,
Yeah.
and how they can get into the conversation, probably
Absolutely.
just through your website.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you say
Find
that
me
one more time?
at The Sharon Show.
The
all
Sharon
one word.
Show.
The Sharon Show.
I love it.
SHARON, thesharonshow.com. That's
I
where
love
you
it.
can
I love
find
it. Well, thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope you had a good time.
I did.